Okay, John Fetterman, Dr. Oz getting together last night for a debate in Pennsylvania, their one and only debate. For more on what happened, let's welcome in former Pennsylvania Senator, Newsmax contributor Rick Santorum. Senator, it is good to see you. What a morning to have you on. Did Dr. Oz close the deal last night?
I think Dr. Oz did a good job last night. He obviously answered all the questions, did so very eloquently and professionally. The contrast was as stark as any contrast you will see. John Fetterman simply should not have been on that stage. He was not capable, even with the assistive technology, which again, people have a stroke. They need assistive technology to understand words. That's understandable.
Yeah.
The problem is, number one, he's radical. Number two, he can't form sentences and deliver a message that is at all comprehensive or cognitive. I mean, you don't see anything there. You see the sort of rote line after rote line. This is not someone who is capable of being a United States senator. I think that was on display. Unfortunately, it was really hard to watch.
It was very, it was difficult to watch.
It was gut wrenching. Can I just address two issues I want to bring up? Number one, I read the reporting in the major newspapers of Pennsylvania. I went online late last night and went through all the major newspapers of Pennsylvania. And with only a couple of exceptions, I'll give one, the Philadelphia Inquirer, most of the news coverage in Pennsylvania, and this is really important because a small percentage of voters actually watched the debate. The news coverage barely mentions the fact that Fetterman was having any real difficulties. I mean, they mentioned, he had trouble forming words and things like that. He didn't have trouble forming words. He had trouble forming thoughts. He had trouble responding to questions. He didn't respond to about half the questions. He didn't use hardly any of the time. And when he did use most of the time, it was because he repeated sentences over and over and over again. So the fact that the news media, with rare exception, didn't cover that aspect of it and didn't really focus on what most people who were trying to tune into that debate were curious about, which is, can this person actually perform the job of a United States senator?
So, Senator, let me
wasn't really covered.
Let me jump in. So you're exactly right. This debate look at some of these headlines. These are national headlines. We'll go right through them. Axios, the New York Times, Politico, not known to lean to the right. Axios, Fetterman's painful debate. The New York Times, Fetterman showing stroke effects during debate. Politico, Fetterman struggles big time during debate. Those are the three headlines, but those are all national. Locally, the only thing that stuck out to me is that WPXI Pittsburgh poll, 82% of people that watched the debate in Pennsylvania say Oz won. 82%. So my question to you, 500,000 early votes have already been cast. Did this debate happen too late? Is it too little too late?
No, I don't think so. Look, Pennsylvania is not one of those states like many other states. We have absentee voting, which means you can actually apply for an absentee ballot and submit it. We have about 500,000 votes. We'll probably end up with 750,000, maybe 1 million votes. That would be on the high side. That would be about 20% of the vote. Pennsylvania is an election day state still. We don't have early voting locations, for example. So there is some early voting going on, but most of those votes are pretty much hardcore people on both sides who are going to vote one way or the other. I think this debate's going to have a big impact. No one could watch that debate or any honest coverage of it and not see that John Fetterman is, number one, radical, number two, confused. His answer on fracking was remarkable. I mean, they quoted a quote from his from just 3 or 4 years ago where he says, "I have never been for fracking. I will never be for fracking," something like that. And he was asked that question. He says, "I'm for fracking." And then they came back to him and said, "But wait a minute, what do you say about this?" And he simply repeated, "I'm for fracking. I'm for fracking." Three times.
Let me play you. I just want to get your reaction. We don't have a lot of time, but I want to get your reaction to Fetterman. He was asked by the moderator if he will release his medical records. Take a look. Well, as my team gets that, basically Fetterman was asked by the moderator, he released that letter, Senator, last week. You and I talked about that. So he was asked about that. Will you go a step further over the next 13 days and release your full medical records? And he responded basically saying, I go out and I make speeches. That should be enough for the voters of Pennsylvania. Your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that is that isn't enough. You need to, when you see a performance like that, it demands I think the only chance he has is to release his records and show what what the problems are, because I think most people in Pennsylvania look at this and say he's simply not capable of doing the job. You know, there was an article today in the Philadelphia Inquirer mentioning me and talking about me and my criticism of his ability to do the job, and said that that this is ableist talk. These are people who have no understanding of the world of disabilities, and that we shouldn't be excluding people because they have disabilities.
Yeah, those
Number
two
one,
issues are
obviously,
separate.
I have a daughter with disabilities and have been a disability advocate for 25 years. And number two, you don't hire a surgeon who physically can't perform the job. You don't hire a plumber who doesn't know how to be a plumber. You don't hire a senator who can't do the job as a senator. There's nothing to do with disabilities or abilities. There's people with disabilities who can do lots of things, but there's certain things all of us can't do, whether we're disabled or not. He can't do this job, and that's really what the point is here.
Yeah, Senator, great point. I'm glad you brought that up. You have been an advocate for people with disabilities for your entire political career. So that was shocking to read that. I saw that. Senator, we'll do it again soon. 13 days to go. But I'm curious if this changed the hearts and minds of undecided, more moderate voters in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm going to be curious to see the ratings, the numbers, when those come down. I think a lot of eyeballs were on this debate last night. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, great to see you again. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
No crooked establishment. None of that twisting the truth. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think.
They let
me decide.
Newsmax.
Real news
For real people.